a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from New York. Welcome to our second webinar in our series on gender responsive procurement in the private sector. And thanks for joining today, and welcome back to those that were here last week as well. My name is Jocelyn. I'm a program specialist consultant at UN Women. Also on the webinar today are my UN Women teammates and colleagues at headquarters. We have Leah Grossman, who is the coordinator of our flagship program initiative, Anna Golub, policy analyst, and Victoria Smirnova, gender responsive procurement coordination consultant. We work together along with our colleagues in the field on our flagship program initiative on stimulating equal opportunities for women entrepreneurs, which capitalizes on gender responsive procurement as a transformative lever to create equal opportunities and outcomes for women. The goal of the program is to motivate both the public and private sectors to source both from women's and gender responsive enterprises and build an enabling ecosystem for women entrepreneurs. The program has been enabled to grow thanks to the generous support of the NAMA Women's Advancement Establishment at the global level and in South Africa and the UAE. As part of this work, we're currently conducting a survey on gender responsive procurement in the private sector. So I'll have Leah, who is the coordinator of our program, to kindly share the link in the chat. Please feel free to participate and share the survey with others as well. Great, thanks so much, Leah. Our experience has shown that there are many benefits of practicing gender responsive procurement, or GRP, but a definitive business case remains elusive, and that's why we're having these webinars. With thanks to Mary Kay, and as part of the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator, UN Women will be hosting these 3 webinars on gender responsive procurement in the private sector to help develop this business case. Now I'd like to pass it to everyone here. Please introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where you're signing in from and the organization or company you represent. I see Alejandra from Plan International, welcome. TK from UN Women Thailand, thank you so much for joining. Tana from Brazil, welcome. We have Rita. Rita, nice to see you again from the Everest Group. Oh, and Chico from IFC. Felisa from the Inter-American Development Bank, welcome. Oh, great. I see signing in from South Africa, New York, Nairobi, the US, Malaysia. Oh, this is wonderful. It's great to see everyone joining in from all over the world. Now, I just want to invite everyone to turn on their videos if you're comfortable, and mute yourselves as well when you're not speaking. And of course, as we move forward with the session, feel free to ask questions or write comments. We'll also have a Q&A at the end of the session, and we look forward to hearing from you. Now, before we move on to our 2 exciting speakers, since this is a community of practice, we'd like to hear a bit more from you so that we could get to know each other better and how we could support one another. And I'll pass the floor to Leah for that. Leah, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jocelyn. It's really nice to see all of you. And for those who aren't able to use their videos, it's nice to see your names. Thank you for joining us today. And as Jocelyn said, and as I'm seeing reflected in the chat, we are really signing in from all over the world. We're still affected by the global pandemic. Most of us are probably still working from home. And this time has been a time of craziness and isolation for many of us, and a time for many of us also to take time to learn new things and to take some advantage for some of us of the additional home base that we have. So we wanted to hear from you all, and you can do this in the chat as well. If you've learned any new skills, or if you've picked up any new hobbies during this past year and a half of being in a different mode. So for me, I moved into a new place and I've been cultivating a love of houseplants and learning how to take better care of my houseplants, because I was not a green mama before. And so I'm really trying to enhance that. Yeah, Jocelyn also became a plant parent. So we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Did you pick up any new skills in the US where I'm based? Also, making sourdough bread became a very popular thing, which I did not go into, but let's see. Yes, others have been doing baking yummy goods with kids. Oh my gosh, 55 plants, Jocelyn, amazing. Meditation and yoga, that's one that has certainly, I'm sure, helped to get through this time. Deepen my meditation practice, wonderful. Learning French. Yes. Garden puns. Oh, Anna, you'll have to share some of those with us. Oh, the garden has everything we hold dear. But after the vegetable garden said, oh no, turn that upside down. So, margaritas. Yes, for sure. Definitely trying to take some comfort in learning new skills. Online shopping, sure, yeah. A street cat, oh my gosh. Now so many kittens in the house. Yeah, what wonderful company. Yoga and stretching. I love seeing these things come through, and I hope that we'll continue to cultivate skills. You know, a lot of these things are things that have started new, and we have to practice. Of course, you know, meditation is a practice. Learning new things, in order to really integrate it, we really have to continue to do it, to do research, to learn about it, to talk to people about it, to be in community often and getting support in order to really stick to things. So that's a big part of why we're also here together, to be supporting each other as we learn new things and as we are on our journey together. All right, over to you, Jocelyn. Thank you everyone for sharing all of these things. And hopefully this weekend you will have wonderful time to Netflix and chill and sleep and do all of the wonderful skills and hobbies that you've been cultivating.
Thanks so much, Leah. I really loved hearing about everyone's new hobbies and skills. And as Leah was saying, it is always a bit difficult to master a new skill, just like gender responsive procurement, but persistence and patience can very much pay off. Now, I'd like to pass the floor to our first speaker, Masharia, the country managing director of CAMISAT Kenya. Masharia joined CAMISAT Group in 2014 as utilities manager, having worked at Wananchi Group Kenya, which is Kenya's first cable TV and fixed internet provider. He has held several roles in CAMISAT, including network construction manager and chief technical officer, before taking up his current role as the country managing director. Masharia, is a telecommunication engineer in training and holds a degree in business administration from Kenya Methodist University. He is also currently pursuing his MBA at Strathmore University and has been instrumental in championing the Women in Business initiative within and outside his role. His hobbies include camping and off-road motorcycle riding, and he has a passion for arts and reading. Masharia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Thank you for that warm welcome. Now, if 5 years ago you'd have told me that I'll be in a webinar discussing gender responsive procurement, I wouldn't have imagined it. Like everyone says, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And in our case, it started with one woman. So for me to be able to paint the picture of where we started, it's important for me to explain a bit what we do. So at CAMISAT, we are a network developer. So we do the tower constructions, fiber infrastructure, basically the engineering of engineering. And this is traditionally not a business you'd expect to find women in. Now, when we started off, we really wanted to have more women contractors and more women employees inside our organization. But the first challenge we faced was, although we had already created a platform to allow or to make it easy for women to qualify, we did not have enough women organizations that were already in the engineering field. So in 2017, we embarked on a plan to try and build capacity and to change the narrative. So like I said, our journey started with one woman. So in 2017, we met a very industrious woman. She was working for a water project. Now, in her own words, the water project wasn't that much different from what we were doing. So we decided to give it a try. And for us to be able to do that, we had to do several things. Now, one was to build capacity. The other thing was also to create an enabling environment. Now, when we speak about building capacity, it is just more than just providing the skills or providing the opportunity. So one of the things we did, we identified that the women organizations that were out there were willing to join, but because of the way the nature of the business was, there were very few opportunities for them to learn. So what we did is we took over one of our teams and we embedded our teams with the women business women. So the plan was we would help handhold them through the process by providing them the skills they needed, the training, and also by providing them with our teams, which would help handhold their teams to build the capacity. Now, that was easier said than done because the other thing we had to do was also change perception and also create an enabling environment. And by enabling environment, we had to want to convince our customers that by onboarding women into the business, we were not going to compromise on the quality of work or on the speed of the work. The other thing was also to provide an enabling environment inside the organization. We wanted to make sure that when we onboarded the women as partners in our business, we had already prepared our teams for the new change. And usually what would happen is we had very rigorous KPIs. So we had to explain to our teams that although we had already set KPIs, we were going not necessarily to relax the KPIs, but to allow room for growth and training. So that is what we did. We started off with one company called Agro. When we started off, we were doing we were rolling fiber optic for Safaricom. Now, by then, she started off doing 1 kilometer of fiber. And we put in our teams with our teams. We helped her in recruiting. We also participated in the planning. And also the learnings that we had. Being in the industry for over 40 years, we had collected some information that we felt was important and would help her in her success. So we started off the project, and in 2018, we had gone from doing 1 kilometer to doing around 3 kilometers. Then, as luck would have it, Safaricom was working on a project, Women in Business, aimed at improving women's in technology. So we partnered up with Safaricom, and because we had already done the prototype with the first women-owned company, we were willing to take in more women. So initially we started off with 4 more women-owned companies, and we started again on the same platform where we started with the training, embedding our teams with their teams, helping them in recruiting, helping them in planning for the business. We also help them in engaging with our customers to understand what were the customer needs and also to prepare them. So that for us, it was very important that we do not set up the women for failure, which meant we needed to provide an enabling environment. We needed to make sure that they had the tools they needed for success. So we started off with 5 women companies, which was a very good idea because 3 years later, our business increased and we needed to upscale very, very quickly. And we found that the investment we had done in training the women-owned businesses paid off, in 5-fold. So one of the things that we learned, and one of the important things that came out from the experience was, by working with women, we had an opportunity to change the culture. Now, for those who've been in the engineering field for a while, it's a very static field where change is not really, really well embraced. But because we had new women coming into the business, one of the things we noticed that they were very willing to learn. The other thing, we were also, as an organization, undergoing change and also changing our operating systems. So it was very easy to convert our new subcontractors into the new system. So we were able to do that in the span of 2 years. And as we grew, the women-owned businesses grew. Like I said, we started off with just 5. As of last year, we had 10 of the 15 contractors that we currently have are women-owned businesses. Now, to explain how a shift that was, in the industry, when we started off in 2014, 2015, the most, if not all, the contracting or subcontracting companies were male-owned. But in this case, we were able to shift, to have a very major shift. We had over 10 women who were already trained, and they were able to train other women. As of last month, 5 of the 10 women we had already started with have gone ahead now to work directly with Safaricom, which is one of our customers. They have also gone ahead to work with other operators within the industry. Now, for us, I think the main learning lesson throughout this process was how to create an enabling environment for success. Because initially, although we already had the platform, already we had the will to onboard more women, we needed to have a deliberate aim at increasing capacity. And out of that, I think we have been able to see much advantages in terms of our production. 2 things happened. One, it offered motivation for female engineers, that not only were we just speaking, we were walking the talk, we were walking the talk, we were also being able to increase our portfolio without having to organically. Basically, we were able to increase our production capacity organically. And because we had grown with these women in business and these women-owned companies, our culture we had already able to input our culture and also match our production, our quality. And this is one of the ways why we were able to provide much needed service to our customers. Now, the other thing that also was a key learning from that experience was, like I said, the willingness of the women to learn. As an organization and as an industry, we were going through a rigorous health and safety culture reorganization. So we had a lot of new requirements. We had a lot of new trainings to be done. And we found it was very easy for us because we had already created a platform of learning, and we had already created the environment that allowed us to be able to inculcate these new requirements to our subcontractors. So as a result, in 2020, as the pandemic hit, our business grew because there was an increase in terms of need for fixed data. And what happened at that point is we were able now to fall back on the women-owned companies that we had built and we had helped grow. And as of like I said, as of last month, we now have 45% of our contractors are women. So I can say for a fact that this is a journey that has been very, very successful. I say this without fear of contradiction that it has grown past what we had initially expected. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Masharia. That's such an inspiring story, particularly considering how ICT and engineering are still so male-dominated, and great to hear that. I may have missed that statistic, but was it 30 or 40% of your suppliers are now women?
45%.
45. Oh wow, quite impressive. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, and now allow me to introduce our next speaker, Sundri Pai Lutz. Sundri is a leader with over 12 years of experience in supplier diversity. She currently is the Senior Manager, Global Supplier Diversity within the Strategic Sourcing and Procurement Group at Bristol-Myers Squibb, and leads all strategic communications and manages the development and execution of the Corporate Global Supplier Diversity Program to ensure alignment with BMS's diversity and inclusion strategy. With her engineering and journalism background, Sundri previously worked in leadership positions for women and minority business enterprises, where she managed their supplier diversity programs and led strategic communications and marketing strategies. Sundri has a master's degree in mass communications from the University of Maine and a bachelor's degree in print and media engineering from Manipal Institute of Technology in India. She lives in New Jersey with her husband, Daniel, and 2 children. Sundri, excited to hear more about Bristol-Myers Squibb. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for that kind intro. It's always nicer when someone else reads it out, so I appreciate that. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here with all of you from my home office in New Jersey in the United States. As Jocelyn mentioned, my name is Sundri Pai, and I go by the pronouns she, her, and I'm a senior manager here in our strategic sourcing and procurement organization with the supplier diversity group at Bristol Myers Squibb. Next slide, please. So to give you a background about who we are, Bristol Myers Squibb is a global biopharmaceutical company with over 30,000 employees across the world, with the mission to discover, develop, and deliver innovative medicines that help patients prevail over serious diseases. And we are inspired by a single vision that's transforming patients' lives through science. Next slide, please. And the slide here talks to you about our shared values, which are central to who we are and what we do and how we do it. Passion, innovation, urgency, accountability, inclusion, and integrity ground our work and unite our community. We never give up in our search for the next innovation, and that could mean new hope for patients who are urgently seeking new treatment options today. And speaking about the case for diversity and inclusion in our supply chain, including gender responsive procurement, is through our successful supply diversity program, which I'll be sharing today. Next slide, please. Our Bristol Myers Squibb supply diversity program was established 25 years ago as part of compliance requirements set for government contractors in the US. It has morphed over time from a US effort to a global imperative with programming in countries such as the UK, Ireland, and Brazil. Our supply diversity program is a continuation of our mission of transforming patients' lives through science. We know partnering with purpose with smaller and diverse businesses, which include women-owned businesses, which are often agile and more cost-effective, can help us improve our efficiencies, drive innovation, and grow our workforce representation. At Bristol Myers Squibb, as you see from this picture, is about people. It's about sharing resources, broadening perspectives, increasing efficiencies, uplifting communities, and ultimately transforming lives. Next slide, please. This slide talks about the value of our supply diversity program. I'm not going to read too much into it, but you see, we realize the value to business, how we harness the power of diversity through our suppliers, the value to community of how we champion economic empowerment through wealth and job creation in the community, and of course, the culture. Our suppliers reflect our culture and the patients that we serve. Speaking about the value to business, our supply diversity program is committed to driving economic empowerment, as I mentioned, and we prioritize this effort by strategically and intentionally fostering inclusive innovation and a supply chain that reflects our values and patients. We understand the transformative impact of connection, and we seek to bring that awareness to every contract and collaboration. At Bristol Myers Squibb, supply diversity goes beyond engaging and partnering with influential suppliers. We share resources, broaden perspectives, increase efficiency, and ultimately transform lives, as I mentioned. So we believe in the ability to build trust, drive change, all while focusing on innovation. And we know that seeking multiple viewpoints is what allows us to develop innovative solutions that transform lives. At BMS, we have a legacy of building trusted relationships with women-owned businesses, and we are excited to continue the legacy in service of our mission. Next slide, please. Thank you. This gives you a little bit about the ecosystem of our supply diversity program within the organization. As you see, it's not a sole effort. While we live within our strategic sourcing and procurement organization, it's how we truly partner with the purpose, with the other various groups in our company, such as human resources and talent acquisition, working on policy and efforts with our government affairs team, with various stakeholders that we work, with our business partners, and of course the global D&I organization and our people, business, and resource group, which are called ERGs in various companies. So this shows you how we truly partner with the purpose in our various initiatives in supply diversity. Next slide, please. This is a little bit busy slide, but I just wanted to highlight here a differentiator that we have from our company is our supply diversity program intentionally runs an outreach program called Power to Impact to connect directly with communities we serve, especially the underserved and underrepresented. Since 2016, we have hosted over 20 events impacting 15,000 individuals. And the reason I bring this up is because we tie up with a lot of women-owned businesses, as whether it's as a sponsor or a resource that help us in these programs, whether it's donation of clothing and food, co-sponsoring STEM education and career programs for middle schoolers and homeless teens and across and adults across the country. And much, much more. So continue to impact lives, even now during the pandemic through many virtual events. Next slide, please. And we cannot be successful without our partnership with various advocacy groups across the world. These are just a few in the local, national, and international regions where we partner up with. It's important for us to tie up with these advocacy organizations to develop suppliers with a wide range of capabilities and expertise to support our sustainable supply chain. It's important for us from an advocacy and a policy support as we leverage the influence of network of external partners with policy initiatives specific to small, diverse, and women-owned businesses. And of course, for certification verification, where we facilitate accurate reporting on supply diversity metrics and more. Next slide, please. Here I talk about our response to COVID-19. When COVID first hit early last year, our goal was to protect our workforce, have continuous supply of our medicines, and relief efforts around the world. That was key for us. And I will share one or two things that we did here slightly different that impacted our supply chain. One of the first things that we did was reaching out to suppliers to gauge risks and needs. We worked in reducing payment terms for high-risk businesses until they could financially recover, and reviewed open invoices in the system, paying out millions of dollars to ensure supplier liquidity. This was key to keep them afloat. That meant businesses continued on without interruptions, a process we follow till even today for qualified, small, diverse, including women-owned businesses. A win-win situation really for BMS and our suppliers. And talking about PPE, if you remember, the craze that went on earlier during the pandemic, where it was not really available, people were using garbage bags, especially in hospital environments. When we needed PPE, several of our diverse suppliers came through with hand sanitizers, gloves, masks, and gowns. But what makes the story truly interesting is many of these suppliers were not manufacturers of PPE. Their focus was on promotional items, logistics, and safety training. And guess what? Many of them were women-owned businesses, such as Brand Pride, an LGBT and women-owned business, which is one of our preferred suppliers for branded and promotional products. And then we use these PPE not only to get our employees safely back to work, making medicines for patients, but also donated those to local hospitals here in New Jersey and community groups, as well as the state of New Jersey. Next, please. Thank you. And I mentioned about when COVID-19 hit early on last year, it also disrupted our world along with racial disparities. With that, Bristol-Myers Squibb and Bristol-Myers Squibb Foundation each announced a commitment of $150 million to address diversity, inclusion, and health equity. In addition, we have also committed spending $1 billion with diverse-owned businesses globally by 2025, which include women-owned businesses. Disruptions in supply chains have not stopped us from doing our work. While challenging, it has in fact forced us to think differently, plan differently, make bold commitments, and innovate with a purpose that continues to put people first. To that, our supply diversity program at Bristol Myers Squibb is a shared objective with accountable leadership across our company and centered around ethos of partnering with purpose. It has also become essential to BMS ability to stay engaged with new ideas and business practices all over the world. Next slide, please. So your next question might be, okay, so how are they doing it? And I would love to share how we are. One is by expanding our supply diversity program. That is by continuing to build capabilities and capacity to sustain diverse-owned and women-owned businesses in the communities that they operate. We are expanding our supply development initiatives through cross collaborations in the organization, which include mentorship of suppliers and scholarship opportunities to attend executive business programs, such as at universities such as Tuck School of Business in Dartmouth in the United States. Such educational programs have fostered diverse inclusion in the business world while educating thousands of underrepresented business owners on how to build and accelerate their programs and businesses, which may be in different stages. In the last 2 years alone, Bristol Myers Squibb has awarded over 15 scholarships to small and diverse-owned businesses, many of them owned by women. One feedback recently shared by a women-owned business was how the Tuck program allowed her to recognize her business was at a pivotal point and needed to operate differently to scale. Because of what she learned, she was able to evaluate financial statements and status and decided to hire a marketing professional to help take her business to the next level. This is what it's all about. Sometimes these scholarship recipients are not suppliers to BMS, but for us, it's important to empower the communities where our suppliers, women-owned businesses, reach the capacity and capability to even work for a company like BMS, which we get excited to do so. And of course, our supply diversity program is expanding in international markets as well to impact global communities that reflect our patients. We've had a lot of success stories, especially in the UK and Ireland, with women-owned businesses who have provided much value to our supply chain. And I mentioned earlier about our partnership with various advocacy organizations that help us in identifying very diverse suppliers in various countries as well. And of course, we continue to expand our Power to Impact community outreach program. Next slide, please. In this slide, I want to share one story that how we were able to impact a business, especially during the COVID-19, and how this woman-owned business helped us. In March of 2020, Ice Safety Solutions was in danger of shutting down. And she had stock of PPE. BMS purchased that critical PPE, saving Pamela Ison's business. You know, we think it's all about multi-million-dollar contracts, but sometimes all it takes is a smaller contract or what we call the power of PO to impact suppliers. What Pam Ison was then able to do, she hired women, disabled individuals from her community back into her company to help in PPE procurement and fulfillment, which impacted us. We were, I'd mentioned earlier how we were able to help our frontline workers and as well as donate to the community. So it's all about timely action and how it changes lives and impacts communities. Next slide, please. And here's two other case studies of how women-owned businesses have impacted BMS. Agile One today is our largest diverse supplier with spend under management, a woman-owned company owned by Janice Bryant Howroyd. You see her on the right-hand side. Diversity was a key differentiator and supply requirement to participate in the sourcing event. However, it's their capabilities that shined on, and they were able to be selected. And today they have developed a robust strategy focused on innovation with a vision to deliver quality talent with speed. And we are so grateful for the partnership with this amazing company. NEI Global Relocation is another company owned by a woman-owned business I would like to share here. They started out as a domestic relocation provider. And over the course of time, they have become our global relocation provider and have provided many benefits to our employees. And one of the key things about this relationship is how mentorship and socialization with our partners in our business have helped grow this. With the capabilities NEI has developed, they're now able to cater to various other corporations as well. So again, it's always a win-win situation. When a supplier does well, we do well as well. Next slide. And this is just a humble brag of how we continue to push the case for supply diversity inclusion through committed performance and more. We've been recognized by various advocacy organizations, and we are thankful and grateful to them as well. And that last slide, I just want to thank everyone for being here and know that the reason we are successful is because our diverse suppliers are successful. Our suppliers are successful, and that's the case for gender responsive procurement. Over to you, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much, Sundri. It was so great to hear about how Bristol Myers Squibb partners with purpose and your collaboration with diverse suppliers during the pandemic as well, which led to win-win results for everyone. Now I'd like to open the floor to everyone here in this webinar today. Feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand with any questions that you may have. I see Rita, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Great presentations from both companies and excited to see the movement and development. Machari, I just wanted to follow up. You did answer my question in the chat, but I wanted to be a little more clear. At Everest Group, we're really focused in on integrating sustainability and ESG issues into the global sourcing services industry. And that begins with a focus on impact sourcing, and companies like Digital Divide Data that are present in Kenya. They are doing things like I saw on your website, you have managed services for the telecom infrastructure. So that's the kind of thing that I was asking about. So yeah, just curious if you know about impact sourcing and if that's something you've explored, because we are seeing that a lot of impact sourcing specialists have a bent towards more inclusion of women in the tech sector.
Okay, thank you. I think that's something for sure we would be interested in. Like I said, when we started off, we didn't start off knowing how big the movement would be. We started off basically trying to provide a platform. So for sure, it's something that we're very keen on, and we can get in touch and see. Currently, what we've been doing is selfishly building the capacity for ourselves. And that has helped us grow, but for sure, because we already have the platform in place and the system in place, it's something for sure we will be looking at.
I'd love to connect with you offline.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rita, for that question, and Mashari for answering. Does anyone else have any questions or anything that they'd like to come in on?
Hi, Jocelyn. Apologies, I can't find my hand raising on Zoom. I'm Tabile Mutabi here from Sibanye Stillwater in South Africa. We're a platinum and gold mining company. But I'm quite keen, and this is to colleagues on the call. I've been experimenting now within our procurement department with the local procurement mechanism in mining, and integrating the gender lens on how we source more from women-based small, medium enterprises within our operational footprint, as to, how, the lessons learned by Macharia and also from Sundari, or quite useful, but being in a mining space is quite a totally different ballgame. Requires quite a certain level of expertise, requires a certain level of income and ability to source quite expensive engineers and so on, whether how colleagues on the call have gone about bridging that gap, that divide, both financial, especially targeting women-based small, medium enterprises, for example, considering that context and realities that they face and the expertise required if one operates in a sector that I'm currently operating in. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. Macharia or Sundri, do either of you want to respond?
Let me get this right. You are looking to see how we could source more women-owned businesses in these spaces while increasing capacity and capability?
Yes. I mean, in the mining space. And so we normally have, for example, business forums, which our stakeholders in our operational footprint who protest, amongst others, on the lack of procurement opportunities for companies within our operational footprint, but in particular, women-owned businesses within the mining space, whether as BMS, you guys have engaged in that space to look at how you support, one, capacity building, and two, bridging that financial and expertise gap that might exist and required in such a highly intensive, technical and capital intensive sector. If there are any stories to share or lessons learned, thank you.
Mining is a completely different industry for us, but I can tell you how we have found success in finding suppliers and women-owned businesses, especially where there are gaps in our supply chain, right? Pharmaceutical we do have challenges in finding certain women-owned businesses, whether it's in the R&D space. What we have done is tied up with various advocacy organizations, and there's I know, like We Connect International and others, to help us find these suppliers. And especially working with the suppliers that we know, we also brainstorm on what are the other capacities they can bring onto their portfolio. The mentoring and networking is key for us as we work within our organization and externally as well, to help build these suppliers. I hope that kind of answers your question. And of course, it's a top-down approach for us, right, to make sure the leadership is engaged in pushing the case for these women-owned businesses. Does that kind of answer your question?
No, it does. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Macharia, I see you unmuted yourself as well. Please feel free to come in.
Yes, maybe the other thing to add is also no matter how big an industry is, we found that, for example, in my case, the capital intensiveness of the projects may have in themselves caused a hindrance for women to get into business. So what we did is we spoke to our customers and found segments of the business that were small enough to create capacity, but also meaningful enough that they would help the women-owned businesses get a foot in the door. So the other thing we also did was identify that women-owned businesses might not have the financial muscle for pre-existing contractors. And in terms of procurement, we kind of relaxed or had better terms. So for example, if our payment terms were no down payment, we would offer some down payment to help the new women coming into business to have some form of capital to begin with. So some of those so the idea is find a segment, not necessarily judge them as the big corporations, find a segment they can work with, then also find a way of financially helping. You may not be able to provide direct financials, but you can offer favorable payment terms, which now will allow the women-owned businesses to grow.
That's a great point, Macharia.
Thanks so
and
much.
I do want to point out, Jocelyn, these advocacy organizations, they also have capital funding and resources available for women-owned businesses to grow. So if there are corporations out there who may not have the flexibility to finance or help in financing in this particular way, it's always great to tie up with advocacy organizations. I mentioned We Connect International, which is a global organization. And in the United States, we have WeBank. Another organization that's kind of growing globally is also the National Minority Supplier Development Council, or NMSDC. And I know that they have an affiliate in South Africa as well. So it's always good to understand these resources that would help the women-owned businesses in your supply chain as well as potential ones.
Great, thanks so much. That really was, I'm sure, very helpful. I see, Liz, you had your hand raised. Over to you.
Yes, hi, thanks. Thanks so much for the presentation today. I'm Liz Whitehead, and I have two companies, Diversity Masterminds and 12.5, and I provide capacity development for WBEs and diverse business owners to help grow their business by leveraging their certification. So my question's for Sundri and Macharia, which is, you know, I love the TUC program. I love your idea of partnering with purpose. But I wonder, you know, do you have opportunities to reach the businesses at scale? Because there is a gap, you know, as we were just talking about. I'm glad that question came before mine. There is a gap for the companies that maybe aren't quite ready for TUC, and then it's hard to reach them at scale because there's a lot of them. So I'm wondering if you have identified strategies for that, and if not, would love to talk to you about Diversity Masterminds.
Sure, Liz, thank you so much. One of the key successes that we have found in building capacity and capability of women-owned businesses and other diverse-owned businesses is through our mentoring program, a supplier development program, all right? You're right, you need to have a certain qualification to attend these university programs based on the revenue and number of years. But again, the mentoring programs kind of help towards that case, where we match so just to give you an example, we would have you as a supplier, we would be mentoring, but then we would match you up with our subject matter expertise within the organization to help you with your financials, your marketing, and much more. We through our advocacy organization, say a WeBank, we would tie up with their official program where they would bring in these classes to you. So there are various ways that we have found success in building capabilities. I can give you an example. We currently are a sponsor of the WeBank Collegiate Accelerator Program, where we are supporting student women entrepreneurs, right, to go on to the next scale. They might be still in school or just established their business, but we tie up with an organization like a WeBank and another woman-owned business who is established, put our heads together and help this student entrepreneur who's a woman in building her capacity and capabilities. So there are different ways out there that we have found. One is through our own program that we have, and then tying up with advocacy organizations. Does that help? And happy to chat later too, Liz.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much for that question and response, Sundri. Did anyone else like to come in?
I see there's a question in the chat from Jillian. Jillian, do you want to unmute and ask, or I can also ask on your behalf?
Sure, no problem. Thank you, everyone. That was a great presentation. I'm very much a procurement nerd, and I'm just wondering if you have best practices for driving change in terms of gender responsive procurement from outside government settings or inside government settings that you would like to share today. And if you don't, that's okay too.
Thanks for the question, Jillian. Macharia or Sundri, do either of you want to?
Okay, maybe I can give it a try. So now outside government, or what we have done is basically provide a platform, because already we have a customer base. Now in our industry, we have subcontractors. And so what we normally do is introduce our subcontractors to our main customers. This does two things. One, it helps the women who are coming into business navigate the landscape. So we'll, for example, help them in terms of getting certification, what kind of government regulations they need to have. So that's one of the things that we've done. Directly lobbying for government to change policies, we've not done that yet, but in terms of helping new businesses be able to meet government regulations, that's what we have done from our part.
And I can add to, so BMS is a contractor to the government here in the United States. I guess best practice is to make sure, you know, you are always have an insight into your supply chain, because while we have a mandate to meet certain goals, there are challenges out there. So it's always important for us to perceive the state of businesses of our in our supply chain and how we can help grow them. And of course, continuously looking for additional suppliers that can improvise our supply chain, ultimately impacting our patients.
Thank you both.
I mean, that's like a different, I mean, I could go on and more. That's a different conversation altogether, because there's, you know, there's a lot to talk
Yeah,
there.
totally. I just derailing the conversation, sorry, but I'm always curious about how kind of how government and civil society and advocacy groups, contracting groups, subcontracting groups can work together, because it is such a complex relationship. And maybe, Sundari, we can have another conversation about that in the future.
Happy to, Jillian.
Thanks so much, Jillian. Indeed, I mean, it does encompass a lot of different stakeholders, as you were rightly saying. Does anyone else have a question or comment that they'd like to come in on? Anna, feel free to go ahead.
I'm trying to raise my hand, but I can't find it. And I promise you, I have not had this trouble before, but I appreciate all of the presentations and the questions. I'm also a procurement nerd, sort of on the policy side, and I've been kind of thinking about this issue for about 6 years since UN Women started our corporate guide to gender responsive procurement, which, but I'm actually not going to ask about that, because all of the different, so far, the kinds of interventions that you have described really show not only adoption, but also like a role model kind of role for in this world of supplier diversity. But what I actually want to ask is sort of personal. My sister is a materials science engineer, and she works for a company, and sometimes she's miserable, quite honestly. And I tell her, you know, I work with these companies, like they really want to find female engineers. Like this is like, there's a huge demand for this. So what can I tell my sister or others? Like, what's the business case to her to come to a program with good supplier diversity? We know the business case to the main company that's doing the contracting, but how would you persuade my sister, who doesn't really quite realize that on the other side of the rainbow, there's a lot of mentorship and opportunities and perhaps even equal pay? So what can I tell her is my question, so that she can be able to benefit from the programs for, you know, female scientists as suppliers?
So I can add to it by saying, for us at BMS, it's always about bringing your authentic self to the workplace. It's how we are as employees here, and we tend to reflect that in our supply chain as well. So it's all about networking and understanding who are the companies out there who have these opportunities. And, you know, I'm happy to chat with her if you want to, Anna. It's all about making that one impact or two, right?
And maybe just to add, okay, to say if it's possible to do it here in Nairobi, it's possible to do it anywhere. And I think the most important thing is not to take no for an answer. I think especially for women in tech, it's a difficult conversation, but from experience, I can tell you we've had some of the most difficult projects handled by female engineers, and it is possible. I think we can attest to that, and yeah, it might look difficult, but it's definitely possible.
Great, thanks so much, Anna. That was a great question. Thank you, and thank you, Macharia and Sundri, for your responses. I think we may have time for just one last question. If anyone has any burning questions that they'd like to pose, or any last comments. All right, I'm looking to see if anyone has their hand raised, or if there's anything in the chat. Maybe I missed something else in the chat. Great, yes. So we will be sharing the recording that will have that presentation in it, and we'll share it later on this week when that becomes available to all the registrants of the webinar today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jocelyn, and team. Really appreciate it. Macharia, thank you for your presentation as well. Appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, and thank you, Sundri and Macharia. Your presentations were excellent and incredibly inspiring. And thanks to everyone here who joined us today. It was such an insightful conversation. I'm very happy to have been a part of it. Now, before we leave, we'll ask all the participants to take another quick poll on the session. So if you could just answer these 3 questions about your experience with gender responsive procurement, and if you learned anything today, that would be very helpful for us. Thanks so much. And as people are answering the poll, just a reminder that we have one last webinar on gender responsive procurement as part of this series in September, and we'll send out an invite to all of the registrants from today's webinar for that webinar in September. So please do keep an eye out. And thanks again for coming to the webinar today, and hoping to see you in September. Have a great rest of your day or evening, and a wonderful summer. Thanks,
Take care,
everyone.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just in a quick one, I will share the findings, please, the summary of the survey. If you may kindly share the survey findings.
Sure.
Session with our procurement team, I'm in the sustainability department. So I have a session next week, Wednesday, with our sustainability, with our procurement and supply chain colleagues, just to share issues, summary of this webinar, and also issues around gender responsive procurement and others. And thank you so much, Sundri, for the reconnect. I will definitely get in touch with them to share their lessons with us on Wednesday next week. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm happy to make a connection if you need me to.
Super. I would definitely love to. Thank you.
Great. Yes, thank you so much. And I believe the survey will be a part of that recording when we share it. So please do look out for that. And of course, you have my email. I'll put it in the chat now too. So please feel to reach out to me directly as well. And I'll just type in my email here. Great. Thanks again, everyone. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.